Well, the release of FM24 is just around the corner, and a lot of us are starting to think about save ideas now, aren't we? We've already covered one on the channel with our points deduction challenges, but today we got to talk about the ugly side of the game. It's very easy when you're going for a top tier club to pick someone with a big budget who've had a big takeover, or maybe have got some of the best wonder kids in the world. But what about those of us that like a bit of a challenge and a little bit of pain and frustration in our save? What if we want to come up against all those things whilst having none of them ourselves? Well, today we're going to have you covered, because I'm going to give you my top 3 top tier survival challenges for FM24. 3 clubs that will very much be against the odds in the top tier of their nation's football pyramid this year, but also some cracking stories in there as well. If you like the sound of that, then please do put a thumbs up on the video. Let me know who you're planning to manage first in FM24. But let's go straight into our number 3 top pick for our top tier survival challenges. Well, at number 3, I had a couple of options, but I didn't feel I could leave these guys out. Yes, it is Pendikspor of Turkey, who this year will compete in the Turkish Superliga for the first time in their history. A magnificent story, a club that wasn't really ready for their promotion. They had a 2,500 seater stadium, which for many English football fans will remind you of the sort of lower league or non-league vibes, where there's 1 or 2 stands built and then just a walking path with the old concrete terraces round the side. This is very much a club that has made history. However, maybe a bit unlike the other 2 clubs we're going to mention today, they've really had a go at it here. They're a side that only won promotion to the second tier in the 21-22 season, and a side that prior to this season were only famous for winning a cup tie against Fenerbahce about 25 years ago. Well, now they're in the top tier with them and all the big boys of Turkish football. They're playing at a neighbouring ground in Istanbul at the moment, which seats about 3,500. But I think long-term income might be a little bit difficult, depending on how the stadium upgrades planned in real life will filter into Football Manager. As it is, after playoff promotion, they are in the top tier and they have had a very busy summer. They've had a bit of a go. There's a few names that experienced FM players will recognise from around Europe doing these types of saves before, and it is a quite eclectic mix of players, excluding a fair few that won the promotion to the top tier. There's been a lot of players in and out, albeit no huge sums or amounts of money have been spent, 1 or 2 paid signings and a lot of experience frees. But this is a club where you're basically working for the short term. It's a question of can you keep them up, and then can you build the club both in infrastructure and in a younger competitive top tier squad for the future, because at the moment very much a short term approach and a lot of the signings are on the cusp of or over 30. So it definitely makes for a fun short and long term challenge for FM24, which I'm sure is what a lot of people will be looking for. And you're going to have to do well to match their start to the season, because it's been draws galore for them in the Turkish Super League. They have not yet won a fixture. There have been late goals for and against. I think most notably a late draw from a 94th minute penalty away at Besiktas back in August. They've definitely made a bit of an impact in the top tier. They've become a bit of a talking point of Turkish football. And so far, without winning a game, they have been very competitive with a lot of draws. A squad that's possibly more competitive for its league than the 2 teams we're going to move on to next in a short term, but definitely not taking a long-term view. And in terms of getting sell-on values and trying to build the club in a long term, you're definitely going to have a challenge, even if you do survive. So Pendikspor, just because of the history and the situation, they had to be my number 3. You have got the benefit of them being an Istanbul-based club, so you're going to have access to the geographic benefits when it comes to trying to sign players from some of the big boys. But it is going to be a challenge nonetheless. If you want to take it on, well, I applaud you. It's a tough one. With that done though, let's move on to number 2, because it don't get much easier. Well, of course, I had to include these guys, didn't I? At number 2, it is Bundesliga debutants Heidenheim, a side that have made, well, a bit of an impact so far this season already, and do have some differentials from the other 2 sides that we're covering in this episode. The first of those is that they've got a pretty modern upgraded 15,000 seater stadium, which is the best of the 3 clubs we're going to talk about here. They've also, unlike the other 2, had a very quiet summer in a transfer window and trusted their largely homegrown German squad to develop and push them on to the next level. Signings that have come have generally been cheaper ones from elsewhere at the bottom end of the Bundesliga, or more importantly from the lower leagues being given a chance at the top. Heidenheim are doing it their way, rather than being forced into what may be expected from other Bundesliga clubs. In terms of their start to the season, you've got a lot to live up to too. Let's talk about the man you're replacing. Frank Schmidt, on the 17th of September this year, became the longest serving manager in German football history, and he did so with a 4-2 win against Werder Bremen, Heidenheim's first in the Bundesliga. A fitting day, really. They also, 2 weeks prior, before the international break, drew 2-2 away at Dortmund from 2 goals down. Heidenheim are a club that have done things incredibly well, and they have been an exceptional story. They won promotion via a title win in a second tier last year, but it wasn't all easy. 2 late goals in stoppage time on the final day of the season last year gave them the title on goal difference above Darmstadt. It wasn't easy, it was very tense, but it was 3 years after heartbreak in the COVID hit season. They played the 16th place Bundesliga club in a playoff for the top tier to second tier promotion. It ended on a 2-2 draw and they missed out on away goals. 3 years later, history was made, amends were made, and my word, they left it till the last second, didn't they? An incredible manager replacing who is part of the furniture at this football club. He had been there since 2007 and you will be taking the reins off him. You've got a lot to live up to for a man that has taken them through the divisions. To give you perspective on that, at the end of this season, they'll be celebrating a 10-year anniversary of their 3rd tier title in 2013-14 season. And if you look at their squad, it is largely a German-based, very solid homegrown squad. There's a few names you might recognise from lower league saves, but they're certainly not a team with stars. They're certainly not a team that have gone massive in the window. They are sticking to what they know and do best on the pitch. You've got to applaud them, and they've started the season pretty well. But can you replicate that in Football Manager? If you can, the potential is there both on and off the pitch with a very settled and well-run club. But it's up to you whether you decide to take on a challenge against some of the biggest sides in European football. So Heidenheim, a great story if you're looking for the Bundesliga, but we've got to move a little bit closer to home for number 1. You might accuse me of being biased here, but I think I'm right in saying, even bias aside, that this is one of the best stories in modern football. Let's move on to number 1. Yes, I have done it, and at last I get to include my club in one of these top 3s. There is no doubt that one of the most popular challenges this year is going to be keeping Luton Town in the Premier League. So much so that it's going to be my beta stream save over on Twitch. We'll be doing that most days after the beta releases, so come and follow me over there for that one. But this is a great story, isn't it? From non-league to Premier League in a decade, a hastily rebuilt stand that was just a bunch of executive boxes before, a crumbling old stadium that one end of is between some houses quite famously, and is now sponsored by Domino's Pizza, because we've hit the big time in style. For Luton though, and the other promoted championship clubs, it has been a tough start to life in the Premier League. Much ridicule was made of Luton spending very little by Premier League terms. They broke their own transfer record 3 times this summer, but have still spent less than £20 million overall, despite the fact it's been a large overhaul with 11 or 12 additions coming in. Probably most notable of them are the likes of Ross Barkley, but don't be fooled. Some of the stars of this team are going to be the young stars brought in from championship level who are looking to make their mark on the Premier League. A first point picked up the weekend before the recording of this episode and definitely getting a lot more competitive. Luton Town is going to be a challenging but fun one in the hardest league in the world. Can you compete in the richest and biggest and best league in the world without the biggest and richest and best resources? Well, you're going to have to find out the hard way. Luton Town has spent so much of their money upgrading Kenilworth Road and saving the majority of the rest for their new stadium, which starts getting built in the winter, that there isn't an awful lot left to spend on players. I would recommend for an extra challenge, why not tick that button, disable the first transfer window, stick with the squad they've got in the summer and see how well you compete. You know all about the Premier League, I don't need to tell you what you're up against. This is going to be an almighty challenge, but there is some promise in that Luton squad. And if you can get them firing, you can get them playing the right way, you might be the hero to keep them up. Can you do what Rob Edwards aims to this season? I'm sure it's a challenge a lot of you will take on, but can you do better than me? You'll be able to find out the outcome of my attempt almost every day on Twitch once the beta's released. Let me know how you get on by comparison, and tell me in the comments if you're planning to take on this challenge. Luton Town, a big survival challenge in the biggest and best league in the world. I'm sure you can forgive me for putting it number one. I'm sure a lot of you will be taking it on. So those are my top 3 top tier survival challenges for FM24. Do you agree with them or disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. There were a few other candidates that could have been in there, but I feel like these 3 are probably the best stories and probably the 3 clubs that are least prepared for the level they're going to. Certainly of the big or moderate European leagues. If you feel there's any other candidates that I've been harsh on, then let me know down in the comments below. And let me know if you're planning to manage any of these 3 sides. As I mentioned, we'll be live almost every day during the beta with Luton Town. You can come and follow us on Twitch to stay up to date with that one. And I'm also planning to manage one of the sides from my points deduction challenges as my long-term story here alongside the head coach. Subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with that. If you enjoyed this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on the video. You can find all the other FM24 related stuff up in the eye above, as well as our continuing FM23 stories, the Twitch channel and the football podcast up there too. Plenty of Luton based content over there. But the FM24 beta cannot come soon enough. There's a link to pre-order it down in the description, which does help support the channel and save you money on the Steam price. And we'll be back here with our long-term story tomorrow, followed by more FM24 save ideas very soon. I'll see you next time.